Bruce said last week, values are kind of like our internal GPS. We don't often understand why we choose certain actions, but it's often because of what we value. I was thinking about this in terms of watching movies. When I watch movies, I enjoy being in a dark theater where all the focus is on the giant screen with maximum volume and everyone else is very quiet, yeah? Like everyone's voices are down. When we watch a movie together, please do not exist, right? And the reason is because I value art. I value the artist's intention and being able to kind of experience the whole thing. Whereas if I were to maybe go over to, say, Pastor Jimmy and Diana's house, they have a little bit more chaos in terms of watching movies of like, let's talk about the whole thing and let's recite every line as it's happening, right? And for someone who values the arts, I think, why are you guys so obnoxious? You know, like, where's the self-control Jesus talks about? And where, you know, but the reality is what they value is relationships, right? Two very different values, but the same activity done in very different ways. And I think if we don't often understand the values that underline our decision-making, we can maybe misinterpret what other people truly value.
Yeah, and it's like, if we think about our family is the way we make decisions, and we normally think about, we make decisions because of the values we have as a family and as a church. If we the idea of being together is I heard many times people say, oh, I like this church, it's a healthy church, I'm gonna put my roots here. And this is the idea of if this is your church, so this is the values that make the way we make decisions and the way we approach things. And in the amazing is in this there's this exchange of life where you get blessed by put your roots down in a place, and then you also being a bless to the place where you are. So this is like, it's just the idea of this is who we are. And when I say who we are, I'm not saying like the full-time people on the church, like Jason, Bruce, myself, Ray, Tessa. It's not just I don't remember, but we're about like 14 or 10, I don't know. It's changing them, 10 to 14. Somewhere there, it's a full-time people that works at the church, but it's us that makes us Church on the Hill, not just the 14 people. So if us is Church on the Hill, that is the 7 values that it shows we are Church on the Hill. It is not better than other place. It's just like the 7 values that God gave us, so that who describes who we are.
I think it's definitely worth mentioning, since you guys are the church as much as we are the church, if you ever find Church on the Hill doing things that doesn't line up with our values, you have every right to come to us and be like, hey, I thought Church on the Hill was a community that valued X, Y, Z, but I noticed in this event, you guys didn't do things as a team, or you aren't really putting Jesus as the center of this, or whatever those things might be. You're a part of helping keep us accountable so that we can work together as a body. So just want to leave you with that encouragement, and we'll start by praying. Father, as we look at these remaining 4 values, I ask that these things wouldn't be something we check off a list that we agree with in our minds, but don't actually do in our daily actions. Father, I pray as we go over these, you would warm our hearts to relax in knowing that you are over everything, and that as we partner with your work, that we would do it to the best of our ability. In your name I pray, amen. So real quick, with your bulletins today came a second bulletin-looking thing with this giant question mark. If what we're going to do today as we go through these values, this is kind of an interactive worksheet that you can write and answer questions. As we go through, we're actually going to give a little bit of space and time to write your answers in. So we're going to kind of continue having things be a little interactive this morning. So if you don't have one of these and you would like one, we have some ushers who are happy to hand some out, maybe even with some pens. So if you don't have one, feel free to raise your hand, and someone can come by and be like, yeah, here, yeah, ooh, boy, yeah, this is great. And we have a printer, so we can print these as many as we need, I don't know, if it works. Who remembers the first 3 values? What did we have last week? What were the first 3 values at Church on the Hill? Keyword, interactive. First 3 values at Church on the Hill. Just call it out. Full devotion to Christ. Yes, that's great. That's number 1. What's number 2? A person of the Word. The Bible as the Word of God. And the third value? Authentic community. Yeah. Do you have a sheet? Were you reading off the sheet? Yeah. I had a feeling. It's interesting. These are, again, not to go over old ground forever, but these are really important because you might find churches or people who want to follow Christ, or want to be a church, but will maybe do 1 or 2 of these things, but not all 3. So, for example, hey, we want to follow Christ, and I want to be with people, but I'm not willing to look at what the Bible actually says. Or, hey, we all do this together and we follow the Bible, but I'm not really devoted to Christ himself. And you get kind of a wonky, unstable church. And so these are sort of the critical first 3 that we want to deal with. But today we're going to go over the last 4. Number 4 is ministry as a team. We believe the church is called to function as a unified community of servants, where men and women use their gifts to serve one another. It is here we discover and develop our diverse ministry callings and spiritual gifts, and we learn to work together to minister God's grace in its various forms. And you can read about this in Romans 12. Paul says, "For by the grace given me, I say to every one of you," that's each one here in this room, "do not think of yourselves more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment, in accordance with the faith God has distributed to each of you. For just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members do not all have the same function, so in Christ we, though many, form one body, each member belongs to all the others. We have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. If it is serving, then serve. If it is teaching, then teach. To encourage, give encouragement. Giving, give generously. To lead, do it diligently. And if it's to show mercy, do it cheerfully." What's really amazing about this is the fact that we don't have to do it all. God's actually, just as there's short people and tall people, and each are good at different activities, yes, helping reach things or crawling into little nooks to get stuff out. That's a very unspiritual gift, right? That's just how God made us. But here we actually have spiritual giftings, and every time Paul talks about these gifts, he kind of just does a whole laundry list of stuff. He kind of pulls a whole bunch of things out of his hat, and none of it is exhaustive. But if you look through the entire New Testament and you collect them all together, it looks something like this list. And maybe you're used to, we have the pastor, and then there's us. Or there's that guy that does worship, and then there's us. But really, there's a whole diverse range. We've got teachers, someone's gifting in miracles. I need to meet that person. Kinds of healings, helps, administration. This is the ESV translation we're working from. Word of wisdom, word of knowledge, evangelist, serving, tongues, someone to interpret tongues. Just the gift of encouragement. Have you ever met someone who's just super encouraging all the time? And you're like, why am I never very encouraging? Well, they probably have the gift. You should still try, but they may be a little more naturally suited for it, right? And even marriage and celibacy, and I know for single people, they're like, please God, not celibacy. Don't let that be my gift. But it's listed in the New Testament. It's in there. And so what's great is like, hey, we're not meant to do this alone. We're meant to work with each other to do our giftings.
And then 1 Corinthians chapter 12, Paul continuing to say, the eye cannot say to the head, I don't need you. And the head cannot say to the feet, I don't need you. On the contrary, those parts of the body that seems to be weaker are indispensable. But God has put the body together, give them great honor to the parts that lack it, so that there should be no division in the body, but that its parts should have equal concern from each other. So, and it's amazing to look in the scripture. It is if the part is start to talking to each other, it's like, oh, my eyes is like, oh, you don't need to reach this part. And there's this, can create this confusion when the parts are talking to each other. But if the parts are looking into the head, to the brain of the body, and then it let the brain decide where and what to do, then there is harmony. It's kind of this idea of a hand, like Paul said, this hand is saying to this, oh, don't touch there. But it's the brain that decides. So if Jesus is the head, and then everything works in harmony when we work in the team. If we put God as the head, if he is the one that makes the decision and guides us, we just offer him our gifts, and then he guides us to where it's the healthy for the church, and then we see a blessing coming.
And it's okay to not be good at some things, right? We can just relax in the fact, like, you know what? I'm not going to think of myself more highly than I ought. I'm not as good at things. And often we can learn about some of these giftings by just trying them out, just trying different things. So I know for me, I went to go help with the Gospel Guy ministry one time where you do evangelism on the streets. And they had us go actually onto the city buses and preach while in a bus. And they're like, hey, Ray, whenever you're ready, just stand up and start preaching to these people. I was like, well, I've never done this, but maybe I have a gifting in this, you know? And I didn't want to seem like a terrorist and yell, like about God. So I just, stood up. I'm like, hey, ladies and gentlemen, if I can have your attention, please. You may look around you and see that this world is very hurting, but I'm here to tell you today that Christ is here to bring redemption to earth. And as I start going, the bus driver kind of turns and he's like, hey, no. So I'm like, sorry, sit down. But there was one teenager on the bus that was looking at me like super intently. Like a lot of people like put in their headphones like I'm done with this guy. But there was one teen that was like really looking at me, and I'm like, maybe I really touched this guy's heart. And as he was getting off the bus, he was kind of hopping off, and then he leaned back in and he was like, hey, good try. And then he
oh man.
And that's when I knew that's not for me. Meanwhile, I meet someone like Tim Walter, who is at YWAM, who is a huge evangelist, and he would wear like one of those dumb Halloween costumes of like it looks like a leprechaun. He's like riding on a leprechaun's shoulders, like those things where it's like this giant outfit, and he walks into Archive Coffee like that, and people start giving him weird looks. He's like, you think this looks weird? I'm not afraid to tell you about Jesus Christ. And he just launches the whole thing in Archive. I'm like, I don't have that gift. I'm just telling you right now, that's not me.
It's because you didn't get the Russian bus driver.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a Russian bus driver. He's a Christian, and he let you speak in the bus. He's like, I'm not listening. He kept driving. And in the end, I remember there was 2 times he gave us coffee in the end. It was like, guys, here's the money. Go and buy coffee. You guys are doing a great job. So next time you get the Russian bus driver. Sorry, I'm very distracting today. I know. But I can suggest one thing. If you has not clear yet what's your gift, I suggest you start to serve anywhere. Make a list of ministry in the church, Kid Nation, welcoming people, ushers, and right there, like, I'm going to give 3 months in each one of this area, and I'm going to serve. And I know as I'm serving, God will open my eyes to know my gift. It is, you will see the Bible and say, when Paul, as they are serving, God called them to do something. And I always confuse with the 2 names, and Elijah and Elijah. I don't know who is the first and the second. But remember the younger Elijah, he serves the older one for a while. He's like, I'm going to serve you. And as he serves, he understood his calling, and he went for what God called him to be. But it's this action of, I would say something that it's me and my wife always say. I prefer God say no than God say go. Then I'm like, Daniel, can you move out? Can you do something? I prefer God say, Daniel, don't do this anymore. I'm not talking about sinful things, but it's in the church. It's in context of serving people. It's better God to tell you that's not what He calls you to do than He's telling you that He's calling you to do something. So this is just me and my wife. You can borrow our idea, but it's just this thing of, don't wait until you know 100%. Serve, and then God will direct you somewhere.
So in your handouts under value 4, there's a question, which is, what are the gifts and talents you can offer to serve others? And there's a little practical tool part of it, where you can maybe think of what's a tool that can help you do this. In this case, like, hey, where and how can I practice developing these gifts? And there's also a little accountability spot on here as well for who can you talk to maybe keep you accountable to that? Like, hey, you said you're going to help serve with such, or try this out, but like, did you ever do that? So I know silence is awkward, but today's sermon is brought to you by awkward. So take just a moment and write down an answer to that question. Just take a few moments. It's so quiet, I don't want to stop. It's just so peaceful. I could take a nap.
Do I interrupt or no?
We're going to move on to value 5. Value 5 of ours is a missional lifestyle. Missional lifestyle. We believe God is passionate about redeeming lost and hurting people. Reaching out to others is a natural response to His love and grace in our lives. The proclamation of truth, along with relational evangelism, is modeled to us in the life of Christ throughout the Gospels. Why is this a value at Church on the Hill? What does this even mean? Well, the idea is to put our talents into action, right? To actually serve others, to be looking out at others aside from our own life, and how can I actually be on mission to care for others? I think sometimes churches can get a little sucked into the ditch of focusing completely on belief, and that's it. You know, hey, we helped get you saved this morning, and then that's it. You believe, you're on the in crowd, keep coming back to service, and that's all you need to do. On one hand, that's true, because faith is all you need to get salvation. Nothing you do will ever earn that. But once you're saved, there should be, as this value says, a natural response to, man, if God was willing to love me when I was this screwed up, then how can I love others when they're this screwed up? How can I serve and care for them? In James 2, it says, "What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save them? Suppose a brother or a sister is without clothes and daily food. If you walk up to them and say, peace to you. I hope you keep warm and I hope you will become well-fed at some point. But you do nothing about actually warming them or feeding them, then what good is it? In the same way, faith by itself, if it's not accompanied by action, is dead."
So even if you look at this idea of missional life, we talk about the woman on the well. It is her interaction with Jesus made her run into town and tell everyone that what has just happened. But if if you imagine with me, in the same town, the disciples of Jesus were there buying food. And there's this like, okay, I'm in the mode now of buying food. So I'm working now, buying food, and this lady walking in and is like, come guys, you have to see the man who is like, and then probably like the disciples like, oh, who is this man? I want to go too. And they're all running down, and those guys coming with the paper bags, yeah, because it's you can't wear the plastic bags anymore. So they are all with paper bags and walking down, and the whole city going down, and it's like, and I can imagine, does it not click in their mind? Oh, we should have been doing this too. We were being walking with Jesus longer than this woman. And we probably didn't care to mention to these guys, hey, by the way, thank you for let us buying bread here. Hey, if you want to know the Messiah, he's down there with us. He's like this woman just did. Like they have more time with Jesus than this woman had the conversation with. But it is something that we cannot switch on and off. Our life is, as soon as we get redeemed by God, they say in the cross he was reconciled us to God and give us the ministry of reconciliation. It is our lifestyle to get like, it's like to call other people into the light where we are. So it is this two things of this lady. It's like, don't switch off when we walk away from the door, and then it's like, switch off now. I am going just buying bread. There was like, hey, by the way, I'm buying bread from you, and I have the bread of life. We walk with him daily. Do you want to meet him? And that was the difference of those two situations. It's not how long we've been Christian. It's how willing we are to share to other people what he's been doing in our life.
And this isn't about being a missionary, right? This isn't about, well, missionaries are called to full-time mission somewhere else, and that's just not for me. But it's being on mission wherever you are, whether you are overseas or not. Hey, if you're here, we're on mission. 1 John 3:16 says, this is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters. If anyone has material possessions, and they see a brother or sister in need, but they don't have pity on them, how can the love of God even be in that person? Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. And can I also just say, this doesn't need to be spectacular things. It could just be very simple. Like the earlier example, here's some food, here's some warmth, right? But even if you think about Jesus, he did a lot of amazing things like miracles, like healing people, but his first miracle was turning water into wine. Why? Well, there was a wedding party, and they were out of it. So he helped them out. It's kind of a weird thing to even think about. Like, that doesn't seem like a big deal, but it was a big enough deal that Jesus apparently did his first miracle using it, right? So thinking in terms of how can we care for others. So our question for number 5 is a self-reflection. Hey, what actions and deeds have I done that show for the quality of my faith? Again, not what have I done to earn my faith, but if I have faith, is there anything tangible I can point to say, yeah, these things, these actions and deeds show for the quality of my faith? So take a moment and reflect. For this 6th value, we're going to take it from things that we do to doing them with excellence. Our 6th value is the pursuit of excellence. We believe God is worthy of our best, and this principle both honors him and inspires people. This is lived out through strategic evaluation, creativity, accountability, honesty, and hard work. When you think of excellence, who or what comes to mind for you? I'd be curious about your guys' thoughts. Go ahead and shout something out. When you think of excellence, who or what comes to your mind? Apple comes to mind? Yep. Say it again? Olympic athletes. It's brilliant. Yeah, you see them do stuff and you're like, I didn't know that was humanly possible, you know? Like, yeah, it's because it's excellent. They had to work towards getting to that point. Husband? Aww.
Oh.
All right.
Do you want to stand?
Yeah.
No.
I think we have awards somewhere back here.
Yeah.
Hand out. Your husband? All right. You know, when I think of excellence, I think of Gordon Ramsay. That's the first person that comes to my mind. I don't know what that says about me, but I mean, when you see this guy in action, you're like, this guy obviously cares a lot about very excellent tasting food, both in terms of how it looks, how it's presented, how it's cooked. The methods need to be excellent, right? Everything goes into, he has super high standards, and when you eat this food, you're like, my gosh, this food's great. You know, like, what am I doing eating at Subway every day when you can have food like this? And so, but there's something about him, though, I think is really interesting, which is his food is excellent, but his mouth, not so much. Is that fair to say? Right? I think this is the image a lot of us think of when we think of Gordon Ramsay, because he will just, he pretty much terrorizes his staff in pursuit of excellence. And so, as a believer, it's not only about doing things with excellence, but it's about living a life of excellence. You know, the pyramids were built, and they are excellent, but they also took a lot of slaves to build them, right? Not so good. And this sixth value, it says the pursuit of excellence, but really the full title is the pursuit of excellence in every area of our life. Man, in what area of my life am I not being excellent up to God's standards?
And First Peter, I think this is one of the most scary verses in the Bible. Because Peter say, but just as he who called you is holy, so be holy in all you do, for it's written, be holy because I am holy. And it's God, it's setting up the standard of saying, look, I am a holy God, and you can be holy. And if he never asked that, he knew it was impossible for us to do this way. But it is in his standard also there is a lot of grace. And in the pursuit of the excellence, I believe that you have also to preserve relationship. It is never the task. It will be more important than the people that you have with. You will see great leaders finishing the finish line, but he will look back and he will never have anyone following him. Like that guy probably, people follow him, but it is the grace of you doing with excellence and we loving people, because this is God. He was like, I am God and I am holy, and you can be holy as well, and you can do things, and you can do things in knowing that God is perfect, but He's not perfectionist. Do you understand? Of course, you understand the difference. That if you work with a person that is a perfectionist, you're never good enough. And I promise you, God will never make us feel we're not good enough. He always gonna make us feel it's the cross is the symbol of we are worth of God coming to earth and die for us. And that has make us worth of looking at each other and in love pursuing excellence.
And that's why we want to put the emphasis on the word pursuit, because God's holy and He's perfect, and we can try our best at that, but we're never going to be as holy or as perfect as God. Fair? but we don't want to be living from a standpoint of, who cares? No one's ever going to see, God has grace to cover me no matter what I do. We want to live with the standpoint of, I'm going to really do this with excellence, to the best of my ability, and whatever I don't meet up to, God's going to cover the rest. So our question for value 6 is, what am I treating with indifference or carelessness that God wants me to pursue with excellence? This could be in your work, this could be in your personal life, in your day-to-day behavior, but take a moment and reflect on that. And just want to say, Daniel, thanks for putting up with my perfectionistic tendencies.
Oh, okay, yeah. He's cool.
Value 7, our last value for Church on the Hill is this: the gospel's power to reach people in context. It's a mouthful. What does this mean? We believe the church can and should be culturally relevant, yet remain doctrinally sound. We want to minimize religious and cultural barriers so the gospel message can be communicated without distraction or confusion. Oh, the worship team come back up, if you guys don't mind. In 1 Corinthians, Paul talks about how he became all things to all people so that by all possible means he might save some. What this is there's all of these things are good, caring for people, believing things, etc., but if we don't actually bring about the gospel message to people in how we care for them, in how we look at things, then we're not really going to be much different than many other non-Christian organizations. You'll find a lot of people who want to help with needs and food and supply, people who can work together as a team. You have very powerful organizations that have understood their strengths very well and have created lots of wonderful products like Apple, as you mentioned, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're following Christ, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're preaching the gospel. And what this section means is we want to preach the gospel, in a way that people can actually understand. So if they speak a foreign language, I'm not going to preach the gospel in English to them. It's not going to be helpful in any way. When Daniel came to America, he learned English to help us understand him.
I'm still learning.
You're still learning? Yeah. But we at least understand, right? And we've benefited because of that. Whereas if he just made a vow, nope, I'll never speak English, and people just have to deal with it, it doesn't help the gospel's message. Also, how I might say the gospel to a 40-year-old mother of 4 is going to be different than a middle schooler who plays Fortnite all week. I'm gonna maybe use some different language that communicates on their level. In general, I think there are some religious barriers that just don't help. Like when you start using words like sanctification or Calvary, there's a lot of stuff that most people are like, I don't know what that means. This is unhelpful to hear. And we always want to make sure we're communicating it in a way they understand. But also, that means we're going to contextualize it to them, but we're not going to compromise the message. Sometimes the reason it's hard for people to understand is because they don't want to accept some of the truths of it. So we can't water down issues like hell, for example, just because people don't like it. We have to be honest about what the Bible does say, what we do truly believe, and not compromise that, but say it in a loving, understandable way.
And I think the way you can, in a conversation or in the relationship you have with people when you're trying to share the gospel, I think you can check mark if in the end of your conversation or there's a moment where you leave the person with the decision to follow Jesus or not. If we never leave the person with this, to make this decision to follow Jesus or not. So we didn't share the gospel yet, because it's the gospel has to come to the point where you have the person has to say, yes, I want to follow Jesus, or no, I don't want to follow Jesus. And you will see a lot of university or ministries that start by sharing the gospel, but then through the years they were like, oh, we cannot offend people, like calling them a sinner, so can we take the cross out of this office, and can we take the hell out of the conversation and make people feel good? Then we are like a social and a good environment, but if you have to come to the point, and unfortunately this is the truth, we have to get to the corner of the conversation and say, here, I love you enough to say, you have to make a decision. Do you want to follow Jesus? Do you want to make Jesus the Lord of your life? That is the end of the story of the gospel. The gospel is the redemption of the human being. If the human being is not redeemed, it is not, he didn't met the gospel yet.
And that's the last question on your sheet, is what's keeping me from the ability to fully share the gospel? This could be in general. This could be someone that you have in mind specifically. You're like, I've always wanted to tell them the gospel, but like, what is that thing? Is it awkwardness? Is it the truth category? Is it you just don't quite know how to speak in a way they get it? But what's keeping you from the ability to fully share the gospel? As we end today, I've been praying about, hey, what does it look like when Church on the Hill puts all these things into practice? When we're working together as a team, serving Christ as the head of the body, doing things with excellence, preaching the gospel, being authentic with our community, right? What does it look like when we do all this? And I kept being reminded of the fact that whenever I drive home, I go through downtown, right by where Nordstrom's used to be, right? And I don't know about you, but have you noticed there's just like a giant line of homeless people on that side of the street now? It's like a particular area that's like suddenly exploded with homeless. And whenever I drive by, I always think, someone should really help do something for those people. And then I drive home and that's it, And part of it is because I know, like, I'm just one person. How much help can I be? I don't have all the giftings. And I felt like what God wanted me to do here today at the end of the sermon is to kind of take a moment interactively and actually kind of create a team on the spot using our giftings. Does that make sense? So I'd actually like to say, hey, if you're interested in helping care for those people using your gifts, I just want to call out a couple things real quick and have you raise your hand to it. And if you raise your hand after service, we'll meet in this corner room that's kind of hiding behind this wall over here, and we'll get some information and kind of come up with a plan for how to help. So if you're like, hey, you know what? I don't know everything. I'm not necessarily the most perfect Christian in the world, but I know that my gift is prayer, and I would love to go pray for those people on the street. Would anyone like to help with that piece of it? And no pressure. You got someone in the back there? Yep. We got two more over here. It's wonderful. Two more here. It's great. Who's like, hey, my gift is in serving or hospitality. I'd love to maybe make some food or get some food to help serve to them right there on the spot. If anyone would like to do that, we have a number of people over here. This is great. This is wonderful. Hopefully this corner room is going to be big enough for everyone. That's awesome. How about, hey, I'd love to preach. I'd love to do evangelism for these people that are out there. I love working with people closely. Yep. In front here. Wonderful. This is great. Maybe a few people who want to do worship. Maybe want to play some music. Not to turn around slowly at the back crowd. Yeah. They have both hands on instruments. No, I'm busy. No, it's okay. And also, too, is we don't want to take away a leadership capability. I'm going to be helping lead the Saturday night service team that we kind of came up with last night. But is there anyone who's like, you know what, I'd love to help lead this. I'd love to help organize and lead this. Yeah, Joe, perfect. Yep, great. And if you feel like, for you introverts who are like gripping your chairs with all your strength, like, let me just think about this for a moment, you can always contact us later. But thank you guys so much for your help. And we'll meet in the corner room just after this. And Tessa, you can raise your hand, Tessa. She'll help get some of this stuff together.
Can I just encourage us? I know when, especially this idea, when we look at it's like, the homeless, and then we have all our political ideas and all, they're, it's like you see kids like, lazy people, and there's no human being that the power of the gospel cannot change in their lives. And we cannot estimate or take it for granted the power of the gospel. And I understand there is at this moment of I'm like, I would be the another me and another 200 organization giving them food or doing this, and it's like. And it's not about that part. It is a part of living as a church, what God calls us to do, to be. And in this process, the power of the gospel can change lives. And even if here in this place, if we can talk to one another, how much the power of the gospel has changed our lives. And we can't estimate that cannot happen to another person. So I know there's this great leader in YWAM. He said the biggest injustice done to the world is done by the church, where they have Jesus and they don't share it to other people. And I don't want to make us feel guilt, but I want to make us feel responsible for what we are, for who we call ourselves. And not be into the decide whose political party is right and wrong. But it's more like what God is calling us to be.
So this morning we're going to celebrate who we are with communion. We're going to remember who we are with communion. So when the time is right, go ahead and come up, take a cracker and a juice, have a seat, and when we're all seated, we'll take together after the worship song.